So tonight's focus is the commercial part of this thing. So again, my name's Tony Hernandez. I'm happy to be here with you folks tonight, and hopefully you'll find it informational and of interest of the things that I'm working with on my side of town. I live in the Dudley area. My service director for, as I mentioned earlier, for Dudley Neighbors Incorporated, the Community Land Trust, that is a subsidiary of GS&I, Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative. Are folks familiar with who have you heard of DS&I?
Yes.
By a nod. I saw you at the open house. So DS&I is this nonprofit community organization, and they established themselves in 1984 as a community organizing entity, and then created Dudley Neighbors Incorporated, the Community Land Trust, in 1989. And that was a result of residents coming together 35 years ago. If you were, for folks here that are older than I and happened to be in the neighborhood 35 years ago, if you drove through the Dudley area, it probably looked a lot like a war zone. There were empty parcels of land. There was disinvestment to the max going on in the Dudley area, and a lot of folks were actually burning down their homes to collect on the insurance. And so you drove through, and a lot of folks are like, you can't define ghetto more than driving through that part of the neighborhood back in the day. Those residents got together and fought the city, and stormed into the mayor's office at the time. Mayor Flynn and his administration came in with not only a request of the city to help this underinvested neighborhood, but to give these residents control over the decision-making process of the revitalization of that community. And so at the time, Mayor Flynn granted this organization eminent domain, something that's never been handed out ever since. Granted Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative eminent domain over what today we call the Dudley Triangle. So that included about 1,300 to 1,500 empty parcels of land. And so I can imagine at the time, if I was in whose ever shoes at the moment when they got this news that they got eminent domain over 1,300 to 1,500 empty parcels of land, that there was a fist going up in one direction saying this is a huge victory, and there was another fist going up in the other direction going, holy crap, what are we going to do with 1,300 to 1,500 empty parcels of land? Because these were all community organizers. No one was an architect, a contractor, an engineer, knew how to talk the talk or walk the walk when it came to looking at designs and how to build affordable housing. Where do you start? So that's why they created the Community Land Trust, Dudley Neighbors Incorporated. And that was with the intent to bring in people who had the skill sets to be able to talk to the architects and the engineers and the contractors, but to also deliver on a visioning and a mission that the nonprofit community organizing side of the organization had, right? About neighborhood control, about economic development. And so how do you do this other than gathering residents, right? And creating the picket signs to go to City Hall and tell them what you really think? How do you physically create some of that change? So the land trust model was implemented back in '89 to take over these empty parcels of land to build the vision that this community wanted to produce. So fast forwarding, D&I turns 30 this year. Fast forwarding 30 years later, the portfolio that I'm humbly in charge of managing has 226 units of affordable living. 96 of that 226 are single family homes. We have a 10,000 square foot greenhouse, a 1.5 acre farm, about 5 more farms coming online, and we just started diving into the commercial sector. All in alignment with the visioning process that DS&I had, which was to create neighborhood revitalization under the control of the community members that live there. One of the big models that we live by is development without displacement. We live by that. If we can't weave that into what we're doing right now, then we're missing the point. And so that's the goal that we have: development without displacement. Folks that live in the neighborhood should not have to be bumped elsewhere because a house is being built And you guys covered some of the housing stuff. We have that kind of portfolio in our grasp right now in the Dudley area. We have a number of commercial projects going on now, which is really cool. One of the really most recent ones was back in April of 2017. I was in Detroit at the time. I got invited out to Detroit to talk about the land trust stuff that I'm involved with. I got love for Detroit. Detroit is on the uprise. Keep them in your prayers. So I'm talking about all the stuff that we're doing here and over there. They're loving it because their neighborhoods look like what I just described that we were 35 years ago. So I'm over there, and I wear my heart on my sleeve. If you won't pick that up, if you haven't picked it up by now, you'll pick it up by the end of me talking. But I get a call and they're saying, Tony, I'm in to try to get a call and says, you want to buy a building? There's a building available. I found out that the private owners are dissolving and they're selling off properties. And one of the buildings is the Citizens Bank building in Upham's Corner. So I'm like, well, let me get back to town and look into it. And so I get back, I find out that, this private owner was selling, they were dissolving. I jumped onto an acquisition program available to the city of Boston, to the Department of Neighborhood Development, and jumped on the application, applied for $1.4 million to buy this bank building in the Upham's Corner and to fold it into the land trust portfolio. Shortening that story a bit, we were successful in getting the acquisition funds from the city. And so I rolled into, of course, going through a number of steps of sitting down with the board, saying, this is what we got. And of course, the board's looking at me saying, Tony, are you ready to take on a commercial building? You're already worn thin with what you're managing. I'm like, you know what? We got to figure out a way. Because the big piece to this for the community land trust model that I like is the mechanism of being able to take land away from the city and putting it under a bubble of protection that is controlled by the community is a no-brainer to me. And so we had to figure out a way to do it. So we purchased the building, and that was in 2017. Citizens Bank was still a tenant in the building until the end of 2017. The building became vacant in all of 2018. So I've been, other than all the other things that I'm managing on the land trust, managing this building, right? Being a regular landlord, making sure it doesn't burn down. It's a former bank, so it's pretty cool. If you guys ever want to check it out, holler at me. I'm happy to give you a tour. If you haven't seen a really cool vault, we have one.
Ask you a question.
Sure.
Since I'm a long-time customer, I really make it over there. I haven't even been over there probably in 2 or 3 years. What did they decide to do? Was it making them any money, or why did they leave? Why did Citizens leave? I'm just curious.
Citizens Bank?
Yeah.
They left because the building was way too big for them. Nowadays, technology is pretty much taking over. You can do banking on your phone at this point. Citizens Bank actually moved to the building next door and took 2 small storefronts, knocked down the middle wall, and moved in there.
The dollar store. So it used to be a dollar store.
Used to be a dollar store. So if you go to the old Citizen Bank, you'll see Citizen Bank right next door. You walk in, it's 1/10 of the space they had in that building. And so they were paying apparently ridiculous amounts of rent. And they were like, we can consolidate and provide the same services that we always have. So it's just a business move on their end to save money.
Yeah,
the building was huge.
Yeah, it was a big.
When I did a walk through the building, they were probably using maybe 40% of that building. And it blew my mind that the rest of the building was just sitting there vacant, collecting dust.
Yeah, they had it a long time.
They had it a long time. For folks that have lived in Boston for a long time, it ended up being Citizens, but it started as the Dorchester Savings Bank. At one point, I think it became like a Fleet Bank. Anybody remember Fleet Bank? Bay Bank Boston was in there at some point. They all went through that building, and the folks that were there last were the Citizens Bank folks. So this was historic for our land trust in that we were able to purchase this commercial building by banks that have been using it for years. And that triggered, a whole new process. I did research and I tried to figure out anybody who's done something like this. So in a way, it's exciting what we've done so far, and in another way, it's been scary because we're kind of writing the book on it, and like, damn, no one's done this. So what are the pitfalls to a process like this? Nonetheless, we've woven in the community process even into the commercial sector of our portfolio, very similar to the housing. What we've done is, we have the building, and so we've had probably between 5 and 7 community meetings in that space already. And each community meeting was designed to bring in everybody and anybody who lived in the area to come give us an opinion about what they think should happen with that building. So we collected that data over the past year. We got opinions from folks, one of the things, let me take a step back. One of the caveats to getting the acquisition funds from the city was that affordable housing had to be a part of the equation of whatever happened with that site. That was right up our alley. Affordable housing is what we're about. I said, that's a no-brainer for us. So right now, part of the plans are to add, 4 to 5 stories on top of that building of affordable rental units. And we're going back and forth on the discussion, right? Everybody keeps asking, define affordable. What is affordable in the city of Boston nowadays? So one term that's going around that I kind of like is folks are saying, forget saying affordable. How about deep affordability? Let's use the word deep affordability because that intentionally says you need to make it really affordable. Because for some folks, affordable just doesn't cut it anymore. And so that's in the equation of what we're trying to create for apartment units above the building. And then the main bank space is what we're having a community conversation about also is what do folks want to see? So we being DNI signed up for this texting campaign for about 2 months. And so at every meeting we had a poster and it said, if you'd like to see artist performance space inside this main bank area, text that at this number. And so over the course of 2 months, we collected opinions from folks. The options were artist performance space. Do you want to see commercial and or retail? Do you want to see more housing? Do you want to see incubation spaces for small businesses? And so we went through that process on top of the community meetings where we had folks come in, we'd offer some snacks and entice people to come in for some cheese and crackers. The city folks were on board, they'd stop by. Officials would stop by and it would behoove them to stop by if you got your community showing up in numbers like that. So we would have a good turnout of about 100 plus at every session. And so all of that with the intent to take that language, everything. I had an intern, Amethyst Carey. I don't know if you guys have met Amethyst.
She works with us now.
She's with you guys now, right? I'm jealous because I wanted to keep her. So Amethyst helped us deliver this, getting all this data and setting up these sessions so that we can then filter it into a language that can be woven into an RFP, a request for proposal that is going out at the end of this month. So I'm fast forwarding a bit, but that process allowed us to not only build an RFP that had technical language, but the RFP for whatever developer picks it up also has woven language into it that says, if you're going to come to us with a proposal, keep in mind that the community would like to see A, B, and C as part of what you're proposing to build on that site. So that's how we're pushing it right now. Once the RFP goes out, and thank you. Once the RFP goes out, I've got a steering committee in place made up of community members and some business owners that will help me interview these developers that are going to submit proposals. So I continue to try to make it a point that it should be a process for the people, by the people. And so that's where we're at now with this commercial building. And so at the end of the day, when all is said and done, the goal is that that building serves the community in the way that they express themselves and the way that we took that language and wove it into the RFP. And then all these other ideas are coming up. I love that you brought up the fact that one of the things that folks are talking about is whatever that first floor space ends up being, how do we maintain affordability in a commercial setting? So we're trying to figure out how to get foundations or how to get the city to not only subsidize or foundations to kick in, I don't know, give me $1 million, $2 million and tell me that I can put a small business in that space and give them the opportunity to afford to stay in that space a year, 2 years, to build up to the point where they can self-sustain, right? And so how do we create that pool of money so that we can offset that cost and allow a small brother or small sister to really do what they want to do in life? So these are things that are in the conversation in this commercial setting that we're trying to pump out. And so the land trust piece will stay in place. That's one of the things. Are folks familiar with the community land trust model?
Yeah, so we had Sharon from CODA.
Okay.
In the 101, so
Awesome.
Attendance is varied, but if you want to go over it.
So the ABCs, the quick ABC of a community land trust model essentially is that, I'll speak of us at Dudley Neighborhood Incorporated, we own the land, right? We bought this parcel of land, we went out and negotiated with the developer, talked with the city, got money, got a developer to build a house on that land. The covenant that marries the house to the land is what we call a ground lease. So we'll strike a 99-year ground lease with our homeowners. And 99 years because apparently that's as far as we can go by the letter of the law. Once the 99 years is up, I plan on just hitting the reset button or having my successors hit the reset button.
So it's not allodial. The title, allodial title.
The what title?
There's a limit, right? So from what I understand is, unless the title is allodial, right? Which is solid and fixed, right?
Yeah.
And there's no limit to it, but there's an allodial title.
Yeah.
I've learned. I'm not an expert in it, but
you're probably right. Some law said that we couldn't go past 99.
In which that's been a big problem dealing with. I grew up in the piano factory, and we're having we're working fighting that. I was there from 74 to 95. I had an opportunity to move to Scandinavia. And at any rate, we must have a way to first understand the culture, the character of a neighborhood, feng shui, the way things are, are and positioned, that vibrates in a certain way. You know what I mean? There's a major tone of a character, and right? And so harmony, we all know what harmony is, right? So there's been, I think it would be important to look at the void that has been created specifically with the arts, and also so-called black owned, people of color owned business, having current, we had living waters, there was a flow that we had, right? And so it has been, there's a void, let me say.
Right.
And that must be acknowledged before there's any conversation. Let me just say, I think that's a better.
No, I agree with you. I think pushing the envelope is a worthwhile conversation. So the way we're set up now with the land trust model is you have the house, our organization owns the land, the ground lease kind of marries the two together, and it says, that there's legal language in the ground lease that says, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, we're leasing this land out to you for the next 99 years. Over those 99 years, you may pass it down to your children. We build an equity formula into the ground lease that puts a cap on the appraisal value of the house. So that's what keeps the affordability word in the equation, so that over time, you can't sell it at market rate. I tell folks when I do the orientation, I'm like, if you came to this orientation looking to flip a house or make money off of it, you're in the wrong space. But all due respect, you can leave if you'd like. The whole point of it is to preserve affordability and sustainability, right? But the cool thing is that a lot of folks are like, oh, it's not a worthwhile investment, right? I'm not making no money off of the house. That's a conversation for another time, but I will make the argument that owning a home on a land trust does help a family build wealth and equity.
That's why the neighborhood should be doing it. You already live there. Why not work, start, creating, finding families with similar interests, artists with similar interests, artists work, live space, and things of that nature, which they will have access to the tools to succeed with what their art is.
Agreed.
And at least have a good shot at it. You know,
No,
make
and-
sure that they have an environment so that they can realize their innate potential, so that they can, you know, thrive and participate with their talents.
And the key to this process that I realized, in the time that I've been involved with it, that I'm making it more of a foundation to our process, is to educate folks. Folks, because they don't know something, start getting skeptical about stuff. And then, when you sit down and you educate them, you're like, okay, I get it. And so building equity with these families by owning a land trust home, I'm like, you're not gonna make buku dollars if you decide to sell the home, but you can pass it down to your kids. You can get into a financial situation where, you won't have to suffer. During the foreclosure crisis that happened a while ago, there were 0 foreclosures on our land trust properties. We weren't touched because folks were in a place where they could preserve. And so the land trust model works that way, where you cut the house, the land, the ground lease kind of marries them. You get the 99 years. We're following the same formula for the commercial setting that we're in. So when this building gets, this former Citizens Bank building gets redone, the negotiation that I'm pulling in our pro bono attorneys to help me handle is to make sure that the land will remain with the land trust in perpetuity, and that whatever service, whatever building ends up on top of that site is initially one that hopefully is serving the community. At least that's my mission in the short term. And that in the future, if something were to happen with that site, because it's part of a community land trust and we own the land, we will always have a seat at the table to offer an opinion about what should happen with that site. One of our committee members put it best, and he was really proud when he said it, and I quote him all the time. When I did the closing on the building and I announced it to our Sustainable Development Committee, he said, we gather like this to figure out how we can find a seat at the table when development is happening. How we can find a seat to figure out how to squeeze in opportunity for the less fortunate. He says, what makes me proud about this moment is that we're not sitting at the table, we own the table. And that was pretty cool. And so, I speak about these things with pride, but with, some humility, and hoping that I can bring it to the finish line. And Lord knows there were, my predecessors put enough blood, sweat, and tears to get me to this point to pick up the baton. So we have this building. And so the RFP is coming out within the next few weeks. Developers are going to respond. I'm comfortable with the language in the RFP because it reflects the language of the community. We went through a number of community meetings. That was the whole point, was to extract that pulse. What is the pulse of the community? What does the community want to see? That's what my job is to carry those marching orders. And so that's where we're at. And there are so many avenues that we can take and talk about the commercial stuff. And I'll probably hold off there because that way you guys can ask me, and if it relates, I'm happy to answer.
Questions?
I'm not sure if this is the time in this, but I guess the time that now is the now. Right? So I would, since it came up, would love to have a conversation around translating what I've found and what I'm actually charged to do through the steering committee of Mission 180 Roxbury, part of the economic development portion. Very interesting. I also spent time with DSAL.
Okay.
So, Dudley Square organizing from project.
Nice.
So it sounds like there could be really cool collaboration, down the line, so we can really grow together, help us unite more neighbors. Neighbors know who neighbors are. Neighbors know how active neighbors are, right? So each neighborhood, each block, right? And when just what comes up is the new battery for heating homes. We're talking about, energy efficiency,
Yeah.
the whole urban sustainable development piece, right? Which is connected to, United Nations and the agenda, the most green agenda, mass green agenda, home. This is really kind of what's important now is to collaborate in that area. By the way, the indigenous name for Fort was Roxbury. And I'm going to get this. Kawakabunga. Yeah. And so when we're learning about new jurisdictions and things, and we have to come back to the table and give everybody an opportunity to, as we learn our environment and our reality of what we found and continue to realize, we have to figure out how to have a conversation about respecting the lands of the region of the first people.
And there are strategies, yeah.
That would be one.
And there are strategies that Sharon presented here. So I'm hoping she mentioned the Greater Boston Community Land Trust Network.
Yes.
You want to talk about strategies about land justice. It's a good conversation, good starting point to be, holler at Sharon and figure out how you can chime in on the Greater Boston Community Land Trust Network meetings. DNI we sit at the table with other organizations that are looking to Chinatown, Mattapan, a number of other, Chelsea are at the table, and so they're at different levels, right? DNI is the oldest person in the room at the Greater Boston Community Land Trust Network. We've hit the potholes, we've had the successes, and so when conversations come up, everybody starts looking at me like, "What's the answer, Tony?" I'm like, "I don't know, but let's converse about it. Let's unpack it." And folks are at different levels, but it would be a good starting place to strategize around this kind of thing.
If I may just quickly, I'm sorry. Yeah. So imagine an ancient jurisdiction actually receiving the land so that it can really make sure that it's trusted.
Yeah.
In trusted hands, in the hands that have proven and shall be very effective.
Right.
But we haven't had a chance to participate in the environment yet. It's about time that.
And the hope is that you got people ready to organize to strengthen that movement, because if I hand it to you and you don't know what to do with
You can
it,
count on me.
you're gonna look back. You know what I'm saying?
Track record.
No, that's a great point.
And all for one.
Who's your next?
Yeah, I think that's did you have a question, Sharissa?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I guess it's after filling out. I'm just curious as to kind of like your history and how you ended up here. Like, I'm just curious.
It's a good question. Where do I go? So I was born and raised in Boston. Grew up in Roxbury first 29 years of my life, and then I moved to Dorchester. I went to Northeastern University and got a bachelor's in architecture, and then I picked up a master's in architecture with a concentration in urban planning from Northeastern University. Graduated in 2001. Worked for an architectural firm for 13 years, traveled all over the country, managed multi-million-dollar projects. I was doing all right, but there was a tug in my heart that was saying, you ain't doing enough for your community. And this opportunity of the director's position came up for the land trust. Because I live in a neighborhood, and there's other stuff I'll share about myself later, which will make it click in your heads as to why I'm involved in this stuff. But I was asked about being the director of the land trust, and it's like this hybrid opportunity that came up for me to bring my architectural skill sets to a table and ask the really technical questions of the developers and the engineers. And I love going to those meetings where I ask certain questions and nobody knows me from a hole in the wall, but the architects are like, that was a really sophisticated question. Where'd he come from? And for me, I'm just a resident, right? I'm just a resident in the room, but I want to ask the questions that not only are going to bring quantity to the neighborhood, but are going to bring quality to the neighborhood. So I'll drill folks. So that's my background, and that's, that tug in my heart, life circumstances. nudge me in certain ways. I'm a product of a project upbringing. 5 years ago, I lost my brother to gunfire, and I had a fire in my heart then, but after losing my brother, it lit another fire in my heart that said, how do you trigger, and took my brother's life? Had there been a program, had there been an organization, had there been opportunity for him, would he have, been in that place to do that thing? That lit a fire in me. That lit a fire in me, and I took on this role. And I tell my brother every day. I talk to him every day. I carry him with me on a dog tag that I wear. That I'm gonna deliver the best I can within my reach to help families in some way, shape, or form. And so, creating affordable housing, I think, is a step in the right direction. I can make the argument that creating an opportunity for your family to be in an affordable home will hopefully give you the opportunity to build equity and build wealth. And if you build that wealth, then you can probably put those kids in programs so that they're not roaming the streets and learning nonsense. And I see the domino effect of creating a place. And so that's why I am trying to do what I do. And I'm realizing at this point in my career that I believe God bestowed on me the gift of gab. So I'm using it. And if it inspires you folks to go out to your parts of the world and inspire one other, then let's multiply and make this happen. And that's what's rewarding for me. But that was the long version of response. But that's where I come from. Those are some of the things that moved me to be where I am today.
Laura, you have a question?
I didn't have a question, but
Oh, okay.
I'm antsy to tap the new intelligence about kind of zooming out from this. It's super inspiring, as DNI always has been. I was the little baby cousin in Eggleston Square when DSNI was first getting built.
You look familiar. I think I've seen you at other sessions.
The Eggleston Square Neighborhood Association and stuff. So I remember those days, and it's a great story. But we know what's happening now, and we can be inspired. But I also want us to be organizing. I wanna click in with whatever organizing is happening. Yep. I assume there must be people. I'm sure that in the land trust, all those great people are talking about this stuff. So I haven't figured out how I can play a helpful part of that, but I'm interested in, as somebody who's pretty actively trying to make things happen with the city.
Yep.
There's relationships and there's, been things talked about and this and that, but I never feel like we're really moving things. I mean, policy would be even better, but I mean, there's all this weird, to me, it's not really, as much as the city says, well, there's this, you can go online and you can see all the city-owned properties and you can find out this and this and this and that. I've tried to navigate that stuff. I've worked with interns trying to navigate that stuff. I've worked with real estate professionals trying to navigate that stuff. And I think there's a lot of bullshit smoke screening going on. There is. Okay. And then you have an election and everything gets put on hold. And then decisions get made, and too often the community's left out of them. I'm preaching to the choir. I'm not trying to preach. I'm just trying to say that I would like to be a part of something that's working hard to ratchet the pressure up on the city. So let us know where the land is. What do they got? What are they offering up for deals? How do we get a piece of it? This is, any city the size of Boston should have linkage agreements that we can talk about, that we can be talking about with our city councilors, that has a city council that can do stuff. We have great city councilors, but we have a mayoral city. City council can't really get shit done.
What about recognizing and partnering with the tributary tribes from that territorial area? at, reaching out.
Yeah, I don't see myself as somebody who's gonna lead any of that, but I would like to plug in, and I would like to connect with other people who are working.
This is
So if you have a response to that, Tony, we'll have Tony give the
There
response,
was another hand.
and then one more question, and then we gotta go to breakouts, starting to run over time.
Okay. So you ask a great question, and I'll start off by saying that ain't no way we answering that question tonight, right? So one of the things that I tell folks that, whenever I do a speaking engagement, I love this line from the training day when Denzel Washington's in the car and he tells the brother, "This ain't checkers, this is chess we're playing. We ain't playing checkers, we're playing chess."
Like I said, I was in Eggleston in the 80s.
Okay? So when I tell that to folks, I'm like, it ain't about just hopping over something. It's about making a strategic move. Even if right now you're not getting a result, you're planting a seed for the next move. And so when I talk to folks, who say, "Tony, how do I start up a land trust?" which is a loaded question. I give them a few pointers on this ain't a cakewalk. It's taken D&I 30 years to get to where they are now. And so part of it is, how do you develop strategy? That the conversation starts at having a conversation of strategy and what are some of the variables in this equation that we need to try to build. I tell folks, we got to scout what's available. Scout what's available, scout who owns it, right? But then once you scout who owns it, you got to get to the point where, are you in a position where you're ready to use money to buy it? So that means you got to have conversations with a foundation, grants, some wonderful philanthropists out there. They could drop a couple of mil in an account for us to be ready to take ownership of the land. We can jump on that. So how do you have pieces in place ready to strike? And so the strategy evolves around that. How do you organize the community around it? One of the things that we emphasize at DNI and DSNI, and like you mentioned earlier, I'm preaching some of this to the choir here, is the second that we stop involving the community and the small businesses and the local residents, then we might as well stop right there. Because if I move on and I haven't taught my brother or sister how to really handle this moving forward, you're gonna go back to square one. So you've gotta, while you do it, you've gotta train folks to be ready to take it whenever you're ready to hand it off. But strategy is the biggest key to it, and I'm sure you've been in plenty of sessions where that happens. And I've been in plenty of sessions where, I tell folks all the time, I do like it, and then I hate it afterward. I love sessions where you walk out all warm and fuzzy, right? You excited, you're pumped. Weeks, months go by, and that's all it was. It was a warm and fuzzy moment. How do you make the tire meet the road after the warm and fuzzy? Strategy. So one of the things we do with the Greater Boston Community Land Trust Network in this particular topic of conversation is we try to strategize. We met a month ago, and one of the things I brought up, I was like, look, we're talking about land, we're talking about this, we're talking about that. We ain't got no money. Ain't no point in talking about getting none of this stuff, and you got a damn dollar to spend on it to move on it. And so the strategy needs to become when we build a stewardship fund that allows us to spend those dollars on opportunities that come, so that we can strike. So, like I said, we weren't going to answer it, but I'm hoping that my emphasis on strategy is one that's well taken.
Real quick time. So there was a question. Was there a question over here?
Yeah,
So
just
maybe,
really quickly on do you participate in receiverships? I know some of the other development authorities do a lot of receivership and create some funds around even loaning monies for the renovation of properties in receivership and things like that. Just if you could talk a little bit about that strategy in terms of getting access to land and development of communities and things like that, or if you guys do it at all.
Yeah, we don't do that. We don't deal with the receivership piece. The way that we're at a point now, because of a 30-year track record. I have conversations with folks from the Department of Neighborhood Development almost every 2 to 3 weeks, talking about getting parcels of land off their books and to put into our land trust, because they feel that once we get into the land trust, it's it's a good story, right? And the city looks good because they gave it to a community land trust, and now it's affordable housing, and all the good warm and fuzzy stuff kicks in, right? So I've got a good problem, nonetheless a problem, in that I turn away offers of parcels of land because I don't have the funds to get a developer to start building on it. I don't have the funds to sit on a parcel of land. You know, one of the things the city is real smooth about is when that grass is overgrown, I start getting them citations about overgrown grass, and I'm like, y'all killing me. Y'all killing me here. In the wintertime, if it ain't shoveled, I get citations. So I'm like, so you're taking money that I'm trying to spend on the betterment of the land trust that we do have and hit me with citations. So I got to time it right, and I got to strategize.
So you can't take on any more.
On occasion we can. It depends on how the funding comes in, because you know we live off of grants as a nonprofit organization. So that's really the bulk of the money that we get. And like I said, if we had a nice foundation of philanthropists to drop a couple of $1 million in our lap, then we can really sink our teeth into a strategy.
Can I ask you 2 quick questions? We are way over. So if your question is quick, too, Sharice, I'll get it in.
Yes, super quick. Do you have someone just that is focused on fundraising and development? To like raise money? Yeah,
DS&I. So DS&I has a staff, and you're looking at the D&I staff. It's just me right now. And so we have a resource development director that D&I carves out 25% of her time per year to help us find money.
So 2 quick questions, Tony. So one, in response to Laura's question, the Greater Community Land Trust Network, can anybody plug into that and participate? Or
I don't see why not. Yeah, it's not exclusive.
Okay.
It's not exclusive.
So, okay, so for somebody kind of looking to plug into the conversation, would you say that that's a good place?
If you're looking to understand how to kind of sink your teeth into that a little bit more and strategy around it, I mean, different towns have different approaches. Folks in Chelsea have properties, but the governance structure there is tough.
I'm tough.
You are good.
And then,
Chinatown. Chinatown doesn't have an open space problem. They've got a density problem. So the equation is different, but the end result can be the same. You just got to move a few variables around to make it work.
And then you said if a philanthropist drops a couple million, so you've said that a couple of times. So because we're looking at, for us, do we invest, for example, like in an existing land trust like Cohesive?
Yep.
Or do we invest in some new land trust? Is that, would you say that's the cost? So is it $2 million? So where are you getting the $2 million figure from?
I'm making up those numbers right off the bat, but I know that $1 million or $2 million, as I look at opportunities in the land trust, if a parcel of land became available, you find out how much a parcel of land is, whatever that costs. It'll probably cost, between $400,000 and $500,000 to build a quality 1 or 2 family home on that parcel of land, to get the hazmat remediation parts done. Now I'm dipping into my architectural knowledge, right? $500,000-$600,000, I could make it work. You get a developer, you make the right investment, you make the right connects with the city. You can see it from A to Z with that kind of money. You recoup the money from the sale, make some profit off of it. A mill can probably afford you 2 opportunities to start building housing, right? But if you can build that track record and then along the way get more money, put into it, and then in the development part of it, we build in development fees and we charge ground leases. All the homeowners on land trust, we charge our homeowners $49 a month ground lease fee, and that's to sustain the operations that I'm trying to run, and frankly, it covers some of my salary to keep the land trust operations going. So that's the mechanism that creates some revenue. It covers a small percentage, unfortunately. So the rest we chase through grants. And we're trying to dip into, I don't know, I'm looking at you probably because you got a tie on. We're trying to dip into banks. We're trying to dip into banks because banks have got CRA credits that they need to distribute.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, do that. Hello. Send $1 million this way. I know exactly how it can be spent in the community. What are you waiting for? And so again, it's strategy. How do you get to that table and have that conversation? And there's a different language in all of these settings. I've learned to talk bank, I've learned to talk lawyer, I've learned to talk grassroots, you know, and just be real with folks about the reality of how we try to make this pop. And so you have to learn those languages, and you have to have all these people at the table. It has been my experience.
I remember Tony working for a nonprofit where we would look at who's getting sued by the DOJ for not doing their CRM obligations, show up right then.
There you go. There you go. So right now, Santander is giving out a lot of love because apparently they got a bad grade.
Yep.
And so we're trying to figure out how to get them to channel some of that money this way.
Yo, we gotta wrap this up. We are way over time. We're 15 minutes over.
Quickly.
So you'll be the last time.
I see a continuation. Well, I think showing a continuation of tapping into the work that has been done, reaching out to the community. There has been the reaching out to the community, such as you know, the outreach projects. We had numerous of these throughout UNLR. You know, the network is a village at work. We did a lot of, you know, different things. And what I'm saying is just the continuation of the work that we've done, and now it's time for us to really implement what the community has. We're at that point because we can show the continuation and the process. So, the same thing with Mission 180 Roxbury. So we
I say it all the time. We don't need to reinvent the wheel, brother. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. We just got to figure out how to ride it.
Yep.
And the strategies, the best practices, all that's out there. How do you piece it together?
Exactly.
Right? How do you MacGyver something that'll work?
Right.
And so again, goes back to the word I used earlier, strategy. How do you strategize around it? It's the key. I mean, because folks at the city level, they're strategizing. Election time comes up, and things get popping. It's all strategy. So how do you play chess and stop playing checkers?
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm trying to end the recording. Sorry. Okay. There you go.